Lin Xiaoya has died, and a tree in the cultivation world has been regenerated. The cultivation life of a tree is about to begin. Keywords of the novel. The cultivation life of a tree without pop-ups, the cultivation life of a tree. Download the complete set of TXT, and read the latest chapters of the cultivation life of a tree. Chapter 1. Regenerating Trees. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Regenerating Trees. Lin Xiaoya lay quietly on the hospital bed, looking out at Yunwan Yunshu, with a dangling pin inserted in her slender and abnormal wrist, her eyes filled with emptiness and despair. Lin Xiaoya still can't believe that she has a terminal illness at a young age. The wrist, which used to have lost weight through all my efforts to lose weight, is now pale and slender to the point of horror. Lin Xiaoya stroked her hair, which had been withering due to chemotherapy, and obediently put on the wig she had prepared for a long time. She calmly walked to the organ donation department, signed an organ donation agreement, and donated her available organs such as her cornea and heart. Thanks to doctors and a series of people, Lin Xiaoya walked out of the door of the organ donation department, returned to his own ward and walked up to the mirror. Lin Xiaoya silently looked at her emaciated body, and saw that she was a terrible and ferocious person who was thin, and bloodless because of pancreatic cancer. How terrifying! Lin Xiaoya stepped back in fear. She never expected to be so thin and ugly. Thinking about it this way, it's ridiculous. Lin Xiaoya never expected that her once desired weight loss would be achieved in such a ridiculous way, and her eyes were filled with irony. Back then, Lin Xiaoya was still a chubby man in her 20s and weighing around 200 pounds. Due to her bulky figure, she was despised by many people and lost many opportunities. Even her ex-boyfriend pursued her out of gambling. When she found out that he was holding another woman in his arms, he insulted her severely, causing her to no longer believe in love. Lin Xiaoya looked at her slender and pale self in the mirror, and then at her once healthy, lively, and cheerful self on her phone. Her heart was full of unwillingness. Why did she have this damn cancer? Countless unwillingness filled her heart, and she couldn't wait to destroy and vent, in order to eliminate the shadow that she had been blinded by. But Lin Xiaoya looked up at the beautiful flowers, plants, and trees outside the window, and then at the nurses rushing in and out. She couldn't help but vent her anger. She was almost dead. Why bother the nurse sister? Never mind, there are too many unfair things in this world. Lin Xiaoya doesn't want to think about this matter anymore, nor does she want to cause trouble for her, because she clearly feels that her time is running out. Lin Xiaoya dragged her weak body back home, to this once happy family of 4, home filled with traces of life, and memories surged in her heart for a moment. Once upon a time, Lin Xiaoya also had a happy family with her parents and younger brother. Although they would argue over various small matters, the whole family was still harmonious and beautiful. But all this happiness suddenly came to an end one day after Lin Xiaoya graduated from college at the age of 22. I still remember that day. My younger brother was admitted to his long-awaited 985 university. In order to celebrate for my younger brother, my parents signed up for a tour group and wanted to take the whole family on a trip. However, Lin Xiaoya did not participate because she found a job that she liked. However, I never expected a tragedy to happen like this. The tourist bus that my parents and younger brother were on was driving on a mountain road, and for some reason, they rushed off the cliff. Both my parents and younger brother passed away. In the following 2 or 3 years, Lin Xiaoya was immersed in grief and lacked energy in any job. 3 years passed aimlessly, and as soon as Lin Xiaoya recovered and wanted to live a good life, tragedy struck her again. After she finished dealing with everything after her death dragging her sick body, Lin Xiaoya returned to the hospital bed, put on her favorite clothes, endured the occasional pain from her body, and quietly closed her eyes. At this moment, a gentle breeze blew past, blowing the white gauze curtains by the bed and brushing against Lin Xiaoya's scattered temples, as if soothing the painful person in mourning the passing of life. It was not until the nurse patrolling the ward discovered Lin Xiaoya, who had been dead for a long time, that the tranquility of the room was disrupted. After an unknown amount of time, Lin Xiaoya suddenly woke up in the darkness. She instinctively moved her body, but suddenly realized that she couldn't move. To be honest, this feeling is not unfamiliar to her. It's like being trapped by a nightmare during a dream, or as the saying goes, being under the pressure of a ghost. Lin Xiaoya often experiences this situation because she is too fat and has limited physical activity. But if it's a ghost crushing the bed, it wouldn't even be pitch black all around. I can't see anything. If it's a dream, wake up quickly. I'm so scared. Lin Xiaoya waited quietly, waiting for the arrival of day, drifting aimlessly in the darkness and unable to extricate herself. After an unknown amount of time, she suddenly began to feel thirsty. This feeling of thirst is very different from the usual feeling. She used to feel thirsty and could endure it, but now she feels like she has a rhythm of dying of thirst if she doesn't drink water in time. Lin Xiaoya shouted anxiously, "Is anyone there? Can you give me a glass of water? I'm so thirsty. Someone, please help me." But for some reason, Lin Xiaoya found herself unable to make any sound. This is too much like a dream, but if it were a dream, it would be too real, wouldn't it? Lin Xiaoya really wanted to move her limbs, but she found that she couldn't feel any response from her limbs, as if she was tightly bound by something and couldn't move at all. Lin Xiaoya doesn't understand what's going on with her. Isn't she already dead? Why do you clearly feel like you're still alive, and she's so thirsty now that if she doesn't drink water, she might really die? Suddenly, a refreshing stream of water poured down from her head, and Lin Xiaoya immediately felt a refreshing coolness spread throughout her body. Her blurred spirit due to thirst also eased. At this moment, she was surprised to find that her whole body was absorbing water. Lin Xiaoya is very puzzled about what she is now. Why can her whole body absorb moisture? However, soon she stopped thinking about these issues. Perhaps she had absorbed enough water, and Lin Xiaoya suddenly felt a surge of energy surging from deep within her body, a strong push to break through the darkness and move forward. In order to survive, Lin Xiaoya followed this momentum and desperately grew upwards, breaking through the darkness and moving forward. In the dark, Lin Xiaoya heard a boom sound, and she broke through the darkness and emerged from the thick soil. At this moment, Lin Xiaoya realized that she seemed to have turned into a small grass. Growing and sprouting in pouring rain, revealing two small tender leaves, showcasing their arrival to this world. Because the leaves are too delicate, Lin Xiaoya was hit by the heavy rain all over the body. After a while, Lin Xiaoya could not stand the storm and fainted. When she woke up again, the sun had already risen for a while. Lin Xiaoya never expected that for a newly grown grass, the pouring rain on the leaves would be so painful, causing her to faint. Lin Xiaoya was basking in the warm sunshine, and her body instinctively engaged in photosynthesis, beginning to grow rapidly. Lin Xiaoya often falls into a deep sleep due to the boredom of life. She relies solely on her body's instincts to act, which is beneficial for her plant. Although Lin Xiaoya is now just an ordinary little grass, it is better to live than to die. If there is any miracle, one must have some delusions to live a lifetime, so as not to have no interest in living. Not long after, Lin Xiaoya suddenly realized that she seemed to have grown taller and the places she could observe had also expanded. It was then that she realized she was actually a small sapling. Lin Xiaoya was surprised to find that her tree body lived on a small platform on a cliff, and she found a cave at the connection of the small platform, covered by dense vines. If it weren't for growing on the small platform and being close, she wouldn't have discovered this cave either. I don't know why Lin Xiaoya always feels that there must be something strange about this cave. How does it feel like a cave in a martial arts novel where the protagonist who jumps off a cliff learns unparalleled divine skills? Post it, post it. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Cultivation World. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2 Cultivation World. After more than a month of adaptation, Lin Xiaoya gradually accepted her transformation from a human to a young sapling. She is carefree to enjoy the sunshine and breeze. Even if she is sometimes tortured by storms, she doesn't care. She has been used to being a young tree. Occasionally, she would recall the days when she lived as a human, reminiscing about her ability to eat delicious food and walk around to see different landscapes as a human. But after becoming a tree for a long time, she realized that becoming a tree was not a bad thing. Anyway, she was already dead, and her parents and younger brother were probably reincarnated long ago. She had nothing to worry about in that world, and she had already entrusted lawyers to donate her assets. She believed that the government would handle her affairs properly. When she settled down, Lin Xiaoya finally officially accepted the fact of becoming a small sapling. The warm sunshine gently shone on Lin Xiaoya's body, and she felt warm all over her body. A comfortable airflow was flowing from root to trunk to crown, and then from crown to trunk to root, forming a complete internal circulation. Lin Xiaoya doesn't know if this internal cycle is the photosynthesis she learned in her middle school biology class, or something else. But she could clearly feel that this comfortable airflow was beneficial to her. She could clearly perceive that she was growing rapidly, and she didn't know if it was her illusion. She realized that she was growing too fast too. Since becoming a small sapling, with the rapid growth of the sapling, Lin Xiaoya has found that her perception of the outside world is constantly increasing. From being able to perceive a space of about 1 meter in a radius, to now being able to perceive a range of 200 to 300 meters in a radius. It was also at this moment that Lin Xiaoya was surprised to find herself growing on a small platform at the foot of the cliff. She could very well sense everything that happened on the cliff. Based on perception, Lin Xiaoya noticed that her small sapling grew several times faster than the saplings on the cliff. And her sapling trunk is more than twice as thick as other saplings of the same period on the cliff. Her root system is more than 4 times wider than the crown of the saplings of the same period on the cliff, and it directly penetrates into the ground more than 1 meter deep. For this result, Lin Xiaoya was completely unexpected. She didn't know whether it was because she became a sapling and mutated, or because of other reasons. Because she had heard before that the crown and root range of a tree were in a 1:1 ratio. It indicates that her roots are more than 4 times more developed than those of saplings from the same period on the cliff. Lin Xiaoya couldn't figure out why she was so different from other young saplings of the same period. Lin Xiaoya, who couldn't figure it out even if she wanted to break her head, thought she should just forget it. One day she will know. Lin Xiaoya keenly realized that this change must be related to the internal circulation in her body, so she continued to bathe in the warm sunshine, preparing to turn this internal circulation into her body's instinct. As the days passed, Lin Xiaoya's tree became thicker and more robust, with a lush crown and leaves. The roots also continued to grow downwards and gradually began to spread around. Lin Xiaoya sometimes wakes up to bask in the warm sunshine, perceiving the trees, flowers, fish, insects, birds, and animals on the cliffs, but most of the time she falls into a deep sleep due to being too bored. Lin Xiaoya originally thought that this peaceful life was her own life, but one day this peaceful life was suddenly shattered. On that day, Lin Xiaoya, who accidentally woke up, was suddenly surprised to find a strange bird flying fast in the air 400 or 500 meters above the cliff, with 7 or 8 strange birds chasing behind it. These birds kept flashing various colors of light around their bodies, which was strange and unusual. Just as Lin Xiaoya was about to hold her breath and take a clear look, in an instant, those strange birds were right in front of her. It turned out that a young cultivator flying with a sword was being chased by a group of young cultivators, and the various colored lights were actually the spiritual agitation caused by their fighting skills. Xiao Mufei, please stop and obediently hand over the treasure in your hand. We are also considering letting you go and not resisting in a corner. You have only built 6 floors, so you can't escape the hands of our group of people who built 7 floors. Be obedient and capture us. One of the group of people chasing the young man, who looks sharp and tall, said arrogantly. Yeah. Be obedient and let's take it. You can't escape from the palm of our hand, one of the chubby people agreed. I saw that the boy being chased did not stop because the other party was willing to let him go, even though he was covered in scars, he still did not stop running away. You have done so many evil deeds, why should I believe your words? You killed my senior brother and wanted me to obediently surrender and give up the treasure, dreaming. Xiao Mufei retorted with grief and anger. Xiao Mufei, who had long been unable to run, was still stubbornly escaping, dodging the spell attack behind him in embarrassment. At this point, the group of people chasing the boy seemed to have already lost patience with the boy's stubborn resistance. Since I am so disrespectful, don't blame me for being ruthless. They looked at each other and released their ultimate moves together, attacking the young man like a celestial maiden scattering flowers. Xiao Mufei, who fled to the cliff near Lin Xiaoya, ultimately did not escape the attack of the crowd and fell onto the cliff over 10 meters height above Lin Xiaoya. Lin Xiaoya, who grew on a raised platform at the foot of the cliff, was also injured by everyone's spells. The entire tree was hit by a fire spell and cut off from her waist. Lin Xiaoya suddenly felt excruciating pain. Even if she had a terminal illness, she had never experienced such pain before, as if she was about to die the next second. The whole tree was in pain and fainted several times. Originally, when she saw humans, Lin Xiaoya felt very happy, especially seeing those people flying with flying swords made her extremely happy. Because she found that she seemed to have been reborn into the world of cultivation, which indicates that she is very likely to cultivate into a human form through cultivation. Even if the chance of cultivating into a human form is very small, there is still hope. But when she saw the boy flying towards her direction, Lin Xiaoya felt something was wrong. Although for Lin Xiaoya, who used to love cultivation novels, watching them fight and kill each other is very enjoyable. But she knew that ordinary people living in the world of cultivation were very miserable, not to mention flowers, plants, and small animals without spiritual energy. The cultivation fight is like a bomb, which poses a great threat to the ecological environment. Fortunately, the existence of spiritual energy in this world can quickly restore the ecological environment to its former vitality. Compared to high-level cultivators who are prone to destroying the heavens and earth, young cultivators mostly lack precision and accuracy in their cultivation. They love to use all sorts of amplification techniques, making it difficult not to accidentally harm others and plants. Sure enough, Lin Xiaoya had a good premonition. She was accidentally injured by the techniques of the young cultivators chasing her, and the entire tree was cut off by her waist. Lin Xiaoya couldn't bear the pain of the tree being cut off by the waist and suddenly fainted, not noticing the movements of the group of people on the cliff. On the cliff, Xiao Mufei was hit by the group chasing him and flew to the flat ground on the cliff. He was stopped by a tree and lay on the ground, vomiting blood continuously, as if he had been hit by a spell on an important organ, and his whole body was on the brink of death. The bad guys chasing after the boy saw the boy injured by the spell and jumped off their flying swords one after another. A group of people gathered around Xiao Mufei to prevent him from running away again. One of the chubby figures, with a sword in his hand, poked Xiao Mufei, who was constantly vomiting blood. You run, aren't you quite capable of running? It's still in the hands of our 5 senior brothers. Hand over the treasure quickly and leave you dead, or else we'll ruin you. After speaking, the chubby boy wanted to stab the boy with his sword again to relieve his hatred. Damn it, get out of here. I've been bothering them for so long, damn it. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Near Death. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Near Death. The next second, he was stopped by the leader of the 5th martial brother and said, "All right, junior brother, he's almost exhausted. The whereabouts of the treasure are the most important. Ask about the whereabouts of the treasure quickly." The leader also stopped the other senior brothers who were angered by Xiao Mufei's constant escape, and walked up to Xiao Mufei with a sinister threat on his face. Xiao Mufei, hand over the treasure in your hand. I'm also considering leaving you a whole body, otherwise I'll beat you to pieces. I'll keep my promise, Li Maotong. Xiao Mufei looked at the 5 disciples in this group with lifeless eyes, without any intention of handing over the treasure in his hand. When you killed my senior brother, don't try to take the treasure from me. Anyway, I'm dying soon, why don't you fight with me? Xiao Mufei heard the man's threat and trembled with fear. He pretended to compromise and said, okay, I'll tell you where the baby is now. The baby is there. As Xiao Mufei's voice became quieter and quieter, the people around couldn't help but approach and try to understand where Xiao Mufei's baby was now. The fellow disciples surrounding Xiao Mufei were all focused on knowing the whereabouts of the treasure and did not notice the dangerous messages flashing through Xiao Mufei's eyes. Taking advantage of everyone being guided by the news of the treasure and not paying attention to his hand behind his back, he immediately took out the intermediate explosive talisman left by his senior brother from his back cloth bag and input spiritual power to detonate it all at once. When the leader noticed Xiao Mufei's abnormality, he saw with sharp eyes that the boy was holding a medium-grade explosive talisman in his hand, and was instantly shocked to the extreme. Shout, run, to the nearby senior brothers and quickly run away from Xiao Mufei. The leading man never expected that Xiao Mufei, whom he had been tracking for several days, would still have a great killing weapon like the medium-grade explosive talisman in his hand. He had already inquired that he was just an outer disciple at the bottom of the sect, so why would he have such a great killing weapon like the medium-grade explosive talisman? The leading man never expected that due to his momentary slackness, he would bury the lives of himself and his senior brothers. As Xiao Mufei activated the explosive talisman left by his senior brother, he couldn't help but laugh as he looked at the panicked expressions of those around him. Ha ha ha, senior brother, did you see that? I avenged you, senior brother. I'm sorry, senior brother, I couldn't survive well. I'm sorry. Before Xiao Mufei could finish speaking, he only heard a loud explosion, and several miles around were affected by this powerful explosive force. A large hole was blasted out in the area centered around Xiao Mufei. Within this radius of a few miles, everything was blown upside down, whether it was people or flowers, turning into powder and blood splattering everywhere, quite terrifying. But even with such a powerful explosive force, a palm-sized red jade-shaped object survived and fell down the cliff with the explosive airflow. Lin Xiaoya was trapped under the cliff and cut off by her waist, leaving only the surface of the tree stump. Lin Xiaoya, who had already fainted, did not notice the fiery red stone and did not immediately expel it. Lin Xiaoya, who was in a coma, had a strong desire to survive, which drove her instinctively to operate the strange airflow inside her body to repair herself. Unconsciously, Lin Xiaoya's injuries also eased a lot, and even many branches and leaves grew on the tree stump, seemingly everything was developing in a positive direction. But things often don't go smoothly. As Lin Xiaoya instinctively runs through the strange airflow in her body and constantly repairs herself, the red stone stuck on her tree stump gradually undergoes unknown changes under the influence of this strange airflow. If any cultivator passes by, they must know that Lin Xiaoya started refining this fiery red stone in an unconscious process. I don't know how long it has been, but Lin Xiaoya's tree body has been bathed in fierce winds, allowing the wind and rain to blow and the sun to rain. Watching the clouds roll and relax, the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, yet there is still no rhythm of awakening. When Lin Xiaoya woke up again, she felt like she was on top of a flame, being baked by the raging fire. Her whole body felt both painful and thirsty, extremely uncomfortable. The pain was barely tolerable, but the thirst was unbearable. Apart from the extreme thirst Lin Xiaoya felt when she first regenerated a seed, she now feels this unbearable thirst again. Under the strong will to survive, Lin Xiaoya quickly took root underground, trying to find cool groundwater to nourish her dying body and earn a glimmer of vitality. With her efforts, Lin Xiaoya finally discovered a little water tan. She couldn't wait to tie all her roots towards the little water tan, crazily absorbing the rain to relieve her dryness and thirst. Lin Xiaoya felt extremely comfortable all over her body, as if she had taken a comfortable bath in a hot spring. The instinctive strange airflow also involuntarily absorbed the excellent airflow in the water source, and began to continuously circulate to suppress the extra red airflow in her body. When Lin Xiaoya regained her composure, she realized that her tree body had undergone earth-shattering changes. The tree body, which had been hit by a spell and cut off in the upper half, had already turned into dry firewood, and new branches and leaves had grown on the tree stump. Lin Xiaoya finally calmed down. As long as her tree body is intact and able to survive photosynthesis normally, she really doesn't know what to do. After Lin Xiaoya calmed down and observed the tree body, she realized the changes that had occurred. The originally gray-brown trunk and branches were covered in circles of red ripple spirals, which covered the entire tree body one after another. The leaves, which were originally all green, have also become a mixture of red and green colors. From a distance, they look like a red and green colored killer. From a distance, they look strange and unusual. Looking at this strange appearance, Lin Xiaoya was extremely surprised. She didn't understand why she had been in a coma for a period of time. Why did she change so much? She wasn't like ordinary trees or maple trees, neither red nor green, and was neither decent nor unique. When Lin Xiaoya looked inside, she realized that she had become the culprit of this appearance, suddenly adding a red jade-shaped stone deep in her thickest tree root. Lin Xiaoya was about to use her divine sense to perceive this stone, but before she could approach, she felt waves of heat emanating from the stone. Lin Xiaoya remembered the group of people she had seen before falling into a coma, and then realized that she had been reborn in the world of cultivation. She suddenly thought of the strange airflow inside her body. She, who had never been a plant before, thought it was photosynthesis that she had learned in junior high school. Now it seems to be spiritual energy. Since becoming a sapling, my growing perceptual power should be the divine consciousness in the cultivation novel system, and the stone in my body should be the treasure among those people, the legendary fire-type spiritual stone. However, Lin Xiaoya, who had no intelligence about this cultivation world and relied solely on her imagination, did not know that the palm-sized stone in her body was not a spiritual stone, but a legendary rare fire-type spiritual essence. Even if it was only a medium-level spiritual essence, it was still a very important treasure in this continent. Although it is so precious, Lin Xiaoya did not take it to heart. Although it is a treasure, Huokumu. This treasure has more disadvantages than advantages for her. The pain and thirst she just woke up from may have been caused by this broken stone. Lin Xiaoya couldn't wait to throw away this ghost stone, but this damn broken stone was actually deep in her own tree root. Compared to human acupoints, this broken stone is currently stationed in her own elixir field, and unless she destroys herself, she cannot take it out at all. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Natural History. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Natural History. Lin Xiaoya trembled with fear at her terrible thoughts. She finally managed to survive. If she were to take out this broken stone now, wouldn't it be like tearing herself apart? Lin Xiaoya felt terrifying just thinking about it. How could she suddenly have such a strange idea? Is it not fragrant to live well? Although this broken stone struck her, it was none other than Lin Xiaoya's chance. Since she is in this world of cultivation, there is also a spiritual circulation in her body, and it is not impossible for her to refine the fire spirit stone inside her body. Lin Xiaoya felt that her cultivation of fantasy novels was not for nothing. Although this method was difficult, she realized that she had plenty of time and could not refine the fire spirit stone. But as a newborn calf who is not afraid of tigers, she doesn't know that this fire spirit stone is not something you can refine as you want, so she is afraid that in the end, there will be nothing to be achieved. After she figured it out, Lin Xiaoya finally had time to observe everything around her. She was surprised to find that her spiritual perception could sense a distance of over 1,000 meters. It was at this moment that Lin Xiaoya was surprised to find that the cliff she was on was over 1,000 meters deep. It was simply bottomless. Subsequently, Lin Xiaoya's spiritual perception continued to spread upwards along the cliff, and she quickly saw the traces left by the battle on the cliff. She didn't know how long she had been in a coma. The flowers, plants, and trees around her were already lush. If it weren't for the strong power of the explosion, which caused a big pit on the ground, Lin Xiaoya might not have noticed the tragedy that had happened on the cliff. Lin Xiaoya sensed that the power of the explosion had spread to a range of several miles, indicating the immense power of the group's struggle at that time. Although she didn't know if the group of cultivators had all died together, someone managed to escape. Since the treasure was inside her body and no one came to retrieve it for so long, she politely accepted it. In order to observe the power of the explosion up close, Lin Xiaoya's spiritual perception gradually approached the large pit created at the center of the explosion along the periphery. At this moment, she was surprised to find that the big pit had turned into a small pond, where several small fish were still growing and swimming freely. Lin Xiaoya couldn't help but marvel. This nature is really amazing, truly worthy of its incredible craftsmanship. Even the large pits formed by the explosive power can become a paradise for small fish. As soon as she saw this small pond, Lin Xiaoya suddenly remembered the small water pool that her roots had searched for when she was so thirsty that she felt like it was inside a cave covered with vines. Speaking of the cave covered with vines, Lin Xiaoya discovered it for the first time when she had external spiritual perception. She had planned to use her spiritual perception to enter and take a look. Unexpectedly, this cave seemed to be sealed by a cultivator. As soon as her perception approached, it felt like a needle pricking, and she couldn't get close by any means possible. Naturally, she ignored the existence of this cave. If it weren't for the roots rooting in all directions to relieve thirst and searching for water sources, accidentally entering the depths of the cave through the underground. Lin Xiaoya may not have noticed that there is a small pool in this cave. If she had known, she wouldn't have been storing water crazily on rainy days, fearing that one day she would suddenly dry up and die of thirst. Lin Xiaoya followed the direction of her roots and infiltrated the cave underground. As soon as she stepped out of the small pond, Lin Xiaoya could clearly perceive that the cave space was not large, only 5 or 6 square meters in size. Apart from a small pond formed by perennial water accumulation and a corpse that had already turned white, there was nothing else. At the beginning of perceiving the body, Lin Xiaoya thought it was a stone. When she approached and became aware, she couldn't help but be startled. Oh my goodness, the body. But soon Lin Xiaoya calmed down and remembered the protagonist's opportunity in fantasy novels where jumping off a cliff is a must-have adventure. Is this the necessary opportunity for the protagonist to survive the legendary cliff-jumping disaster? Now this opportunity belonged to her, and Lin Xiaoya was extremely happy. She moved her barely movable roots and came to the side of the body to search for her own opportunity. At this moment, a dusty small cloth bag was found by her from the body's embrace. Lin Xiaoya had an intuition that this small cloth bag was the treasure, and it was very likely to be the necessary Qiankuan bag in the legendary cultivation world. So Lin Xiaoya took the small cloth bag with her roots and wanted to study it carefully. As soon as Lin Xiaoya's spiritual perception approached, the small cloth bag automatically opened its contents to her, as if very thirsty and asking for something from her. Lin Xiaoya noticed that there was a storage space of 5 or 6 cubic meters inside the small cloth bag, which contained some gold and silver, clothing, moldy dry food, and other miscellaneous items. The most eye-catching ones are not gold and silver, but several colorless spirit crystals and 2 long jade slips the size of glass balls with only a trace of spiritual energy. Lin Xiaoya set aside the few spiritual crystals and picked up the jade slips, because in her opinion, those 2 jade slips were much more interesting than the spiritual crystals at first glance. Immediately, she focused all her attention on the jade slip. If she guessed correctly, it must be something like a cultivation technique. Lin Xiaoya took out the spirit crystal and jade slips from her small cloth bag, and casually hid the space bag and spirit crystal under the tree roots, then began to study the jade slips. I saw 2 jade slips dim and lifeless, as if no one had opened them for a long time. There was no trace of jade that was as delicate as before, and they were full of traces of time. Lin Xiaoya looked at the jade slips, which were too dim, and couldn't help but want to wash them with clean water. Unexpectedly, just as they were put into the small pool, the jade slips seemed to be activated, instantly becoming as white as new, as if they had been carefully polished. Looking at the suddenly clean and bright jade slips, Lin Xiaoya used her spiritual perception to wrap them around. Soon, she discovered the activation method of the jade slips, which required spiritual energy activation. The dullness of the jade slips is entirely due to long-term lack of contact with spiritual energy. As long as activated with spiritual energy, the jade slips can be restored as new. So, Lin Xiaoya used various methods to extract a little bit of spiritual energy from her body. The spiritual energy penetrated deep into the cave along her roots and injected it into the jade slips. A white light suddenly escaped into her body, and for a moment, a large amount of news was stuffed into her mind, causing her to feel dizzy, bloated, and splitting. After waiting for a while, Lin Xiaoya reluctantly sorted out the large amount of information that suddenly appeared in her mind. One of the jade slips is a medium-grade sword technique book, while the other jade slip is a museum record that records information about the continent where one is located. Compared to that sword script, the geographical scenery and interesting stories recorded in this jade slip, such as the cultivation of the north and south, perfectly suit Lin Xiaoya's taste. She has been in this world for so many years, and it is the first time she has been exposed to information about this world. Moreover, this museum is very intelligent. Even if she does not understand the words of this world, she can still understand them. This natural history chronicles everything comprehensively. While carefully studying it, Lin Xiaoya endured the pain of constantly refining the fire spirit stone in her body, attempting to find a solution from the natural history. As time passed, Lin Xiaoya read 1243 volumes of the natural history records but still couldn't find a solution. The fire spirit stone riot that occurred once a day at noon also tormented her, causing her entire tree to wither. Fortunately, the accumulated water spirit energy in the small water pool in the cave over the years can occasionally alleviate her pain. Lin Xiaoya was very afraid that she wouldn't be able to endure the moment when she found a solution, because after taking so long, Lin Xiaoya found that she had only read 1/3 of the natural history. By the time she finished reading everything, she might have been tortured to death by the fire spirit stone long ago. After a long time, Lin Xiaoya finally found the introduction of the palm-sized spiritual stone. It was then that she realized that this broken stone was a treasure that countless fire cultivators had long dreamed of, the spiritual essence of fire. The fire essence. As long as it is buried underground, it will continuously generate fire-type spiritual energy, change the geology and spiritual energy of a place, and over time, it may even form a fire spirit stone mine. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Riots. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 Riots. According to the records in the records of natural history, spiritual essence is extremely rare on this continent. There are not many low-level spiritual essence, and mid-level spiritual essence is the treasure of large families or cultivation sections. High-level spiritual essence is not even heard of. It seems that only the top 4 cultivation sects on this continent can possess it, and top-grade spiritual essence is a legendary legend. Lin Xiaoya carefully looked at the introduction about the broken stone in her body. She thought it was just an ordinary treasure, but never expected it to be so precious. Continuing to read, Lin Xiaoya couldn't help but furrow her brows, because she unexpectedly learned from the natural history that in order to suppress the fire-type spiritual essence, she must first find a water-type spiritual essence of the same level. As the saying goes, water overcomes fire. Only medium-grade water-type spiritual essence can suppress the fire-type spiritual essence. Thinking of this, Lin Xiaoya suddenly felt a splitting headache. Oh my god, according to this museum record, low-grade spiritual essence is relatively rare on this continent, let alone medium-grade spiritual essence. Do you really want to be tortured to death by fire-type spiritual essence? Fortunately, the emperor does not disappoint those who have intentions. Lin Xiaoya suddenly discovered a small line at the bottom of the natural history, which read, if any high-level spiritual essence is present in the world, it can be wrapped in spiritual energy with attributes that counteract each other, and can temporarily suppress the damage and traces of the spiritual essence. Seeing this, Lin Xiaoya couldn't help but think of herself being too thirsty and rooting in a small pool to absorb water, while also seemingly absorbing a lot of water spiritual energy to suppress the fire-type spiritual essence. But that small pool is just an ordinary small pool, and the spiritual energy of the water system in the small pool was originally formed by the continuous accumulation of the cave being sealed. Last time, in order to save herself, her tree instinctively absorbed most of the water-based spiritual energy to suppress the fire-based spiritual essence. After several absorption, the water-based spiritual energy is now very few. With the continuous decrease of water spiritual energy, Lin Xiaoya clearly felt the arrival of danger. Without water spiritual energy, how could she cope with the spiritual essence uprising at noon every day, and how could she reduce pain in the process of refining the fire spiritual essence? Lin Xiaoya didn't understand why even Huokumu, the fire spirit marrow, would riot wildly at noon. Once a day, she felt like she couldn't keep up with her happiness. Thinking of this, Lin Xiaoya had a splitting headache. According to the records in the natural history, she lived on the northernmost cliff of the mainland, with the vast and boundless Dongsa Sea beneath her. Although the sea was full of seawater, for some reason, the water spiritual energy was very scarce. Her crazy cultivation and absorption of water spiritual energy could not match 1/10 of what she absorbed in the small pool. According to the records of natural history, this continent is called Tianyuan continent, with 3 faces facing the sea. At the westernmost, there are hundreds of continuous mountains called 100,000 mountains, which are connected to other continents. The easternmost part is occupied by continuous cliffs, while the majority is flat plains. The southernmost part is adjacent to the South China Sea, where the climate is pleasant and the terrain is complex, forming many famous forests. The northernmost part is located near the Arctic, where the climate is extremely cold and difficult to survive. The most difficult thing for Lin Xiaoya to accept is that all 3 sides have a very abundant spiritual energy, but the spiritual energy on the easternmost side is the rarest. Therefore, the closer she is to the easternmost side, the more mortal countries there are, and the thinner the spiritual energy is. The closer she is to the westernmost side, the more cultivators there are, and the denser the spiritual energy is. Lin Xiaoya feels a bit unlucky too. Firstly, my dear parents and younger brother both died. After finally recovering and preparing to live a good life, I ended up suffering from a terminal illness. After finally being reborn and starting a new life, I was almost wiped out by unexpected disasters. Finally, I came back to life and was tormented by so-called treasures. Every day, life feels like death. I finally had the opportunity to live, but was also struck by reality. Oh my goodness, what have I done wrong? Do you want to treat me like this? Every time the hope that just ignites is extinguished, do you want to play with me like this? Lin Xiaoya couldn't help but shout in her heart, but she didn't know that there was no unlucky life in this world, only more unlucky. Lin Xiaoya, who was saddened by the spring and autumn, did not notice that under the geographical introduction of the easternmost cliff, she wrote this line of small characters. Because the spiritual energy of the easternmost cliff is scarce, it is actually a good place for scattered cultivation and crossing tribulations. Because there are often scattered cultivators who cross tribulations here, most of them know this place and habitually come here to cross tribulations, so this place is also considered a forbidden place for mortals. According to the records of natural history, the rarer the spiritual energy, the less powerful the thunder of crossing the tribulation, unless these cultivators, who are covered by families and sects or have strong abilities, are prepared to cross the tribulation in places with abundant spiritual energy. Those non-sectarian cultivators usually search for places with sparse spiritual energy and sparse population to cross tribulations. Apart from the particularly powerful cultivators, this winter extreme cliff is a good place to cross tribulations, which is a small wisdom for ordinary cultivators to survive. As a result, Lin Xiaoya, who was troubled by the fire-type spiritual essence uprising, did not notice the small character at the bottom of the natural history. In her opinion, the sadness of spring and autumn is useless. Living is the most important thing, even if there is only a very small amount of water spiritual energy in the air. As long as she works hard, being able to live for an additional period of time is considered earning. So, Lin Xiaoya used all the usable parts on her exterior to crazily absorb the spiritual energy in the air, especially the water spiritual energy. Lin Xiaoya kept practicing while enduring the pain brought by the fire spirit marrow, constantly refining the fire spirit marrow, trying to find a glimmer of vitality. It was unknown how long had passed, and Lin Xiaoya was immersed in her cultivation. She didn't notice any changes happening outside, nor did she notice that as she continuously refined the fire-type spiritual essence in her body, all her leaves had already turned fiery red, looking like a bright red maple tree from a distance. On that day, a middle-aged man dressed in navy blue appeared on the cliff, skillfully crossing flowers, plants, and trees to reach the edge of the cliff. Along the way, he also saw the large pit caused by the explosion of the spirit talisman, and cautiously took a step back. If this spirit talisman could generate such a large explosive force, it must be a mid-level spirit talisman. If it weren't for looking at the traces left a long time ago, it seems that no one has been here for a long time, and the middle-aged person would have wanted to leave here long ago. As a casual cultivator without any sect, he finally built a foundation and was ready to take pills. He neither had a master to protect him nor many treasures to squander. He can only cross the tribulation to a remote place with scarce spiritual energy. This is a good place he stumbled upon by chance. His foundation-building tribulation was safely spent here. This is not where I played the golden pill tribulation, he thought of it again. Although there is a high probability of failure when crossing the golden elixir tribulation in a place with scarce spiritual energy, even if successful, the quality of the golden elixir will not be too good. But it's better than being struck by lightning and unable to move, without anyone to protect and being attacked and killed by someone. After all, most of the resources in the cultivation world are divided among the cultivation families and sects, and the remaining small part of the resources is contested by countless scattered cultivators. Killing and looting treasures is not uncommon, especially for wild gold pill cultivators who are coveted by countless people. There are also many who kill and take gold pills. Tan Zijian stood on the edge of the cliff, looking at the vast sea in the distance. A surge of pride surged in his heart, and he finally achieved a perfect foundation. He spent over 280 years and finally cultivated until the end of his life, reaching the perfect foundation. As long as he passed the golden elixir tribulation, even the lowest golden elixir could survive for an additional 500 years. At that time, he was also the proud son of the family. Although the family was considered a small family in the 4th and 5th class on this continent, it was also one of the top big families in Yucheng. It had a jade mine that could produce countless high-quality jade stones, and the jade boxes and slips refined by the family sold well throughout the entire continent. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Tan Zijian. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Tan Zijian. Later, two other major families in Yucheng joined forces to invade the family's Yusher mountain and killed more than 230 members of the Tan family, as well as over 3,000 servants and followers. Tan Zijian narrowly escaped. Tan Zijian also wanted revenge, but unfortunately, his spiritual roots were injured by people sent by the two major families. In this continent, his spiritual roots were so injured that there was no way to treat them, and even cultivation became extremely difficult. Tan Zijian also considered joining other sects, but due to his damaged spiritual roots, the major cultivation sects did not look up to him, and he also looked down on those small cultivation sects, which caused him to become a scattered cultivator. After becoming a casual cultivator, Tan Zijian finally understood why everyone wanted to join the cultivation sect, entirely because the cultivation sects of all sizes controlled 80% of the resources in the Tianyuan continent, and the remaining 20% were too few. However, there were many casual cultivators, so the competition between them was very fierce. Tan Zijian also wanted to practice well to avenge his family, but the fear of serious injuries and even imminent death made him a cautious person and a person who bullies the good and fears the evil. Tan Zijian was not at ease, so he carefully checked around and found that there had indeed been no humans coming to class here for a long time. Only then did he feel relieved. Tan Zijian suddenly jumped to his secret base, which was the platform where Lin Xiaoya was located. This was the cave he discovered while crossing the Foundation Calamity, which had not been here for over 280 years. As soon as he landed on the platform, Tan Zijian saw this big tree covered in red leaves, thriving on the already small platform. I don't know if it's his illusion. From a distance, this tree looks like a maple tree. Why does it look so much like a peach tree up close? How strange. Although Tan Zijian was strange, he didn't take it to heart. It was just an ordinary tree, although it had some spiritual fluctuations, it wasn't very strong and didn't deserve his attention. Crossing the tribulation was the most important thing. Although he didn't know when a tree had grown here during the 200 years since he left, it wasn't his own exclusive cave. If he could discover it himself, others might also discover it. Well, just as Tan Zijian was about to enter the cave, recuperate well and prepare to cross the calamity, he discovered the seal on the cave. Fortunately, the seal was not very advanced and had not been reinforced for a long time. With a wave of his hand, the seal was lifted. Tan Zijian entered the cave and saw a skeleton that had already died and turned into white bones. Looking at the tattered skeleton, he knew that there was nothing good about it. I saw Tan Zijian pinching the formula with his right hand and using his spiritual energy with his left hand. The skeleton instantly turned into flying ash. Immediately after, with a wave of his right hand, a fierce gust of wind blew the flying ash clean, and then he used a cleaning technique, instantly revitalizing the entire cave. Lin Xiaoya, who was addicted to refining the fire spirit essence inside her body, did not notice the arrival of the man. Even if her tree suddenly felt a strong wind, making her leaves and flowers rustle, she did not care. Lin Xiaoya grew up on the edge of a cliff. She had long been accustomed to the strong winds and heavy rain here, and was no longer as fragile as when the seedlings first grew. After cleaning the cave, the man began to meditate and recuperate, trying to adjust to the best state before the thunder attack, and to deal with the thunder attack with full spirit. If he can't cross the thunder calamity this time, Tan Zijian probably won't have another chance. He has already prepared everything for this calamity. As it was approaching noon, Tan Zijian felt the signs of pill formation. He quickly walked out of the cave and jumped onto the cliff. He watched the approaching dark clouds in the distance and the oppressive thunder, feeling extremely nervous, but still mustered up the courage to face the thunder, and if he didn't succeed, he would be forgiven. Just as Tan Zijian was preparing to cope with the calamity, it was noon when Lin Xiaoya habitually woke up, crazily absorbing spiritual energy while constantly refining the fire-type spiritual essence to suppress the spiritual essence riot. The leaves all over her body emitted a strong fire-type spiritual energy, looking like natural materials and treasures. Tan Zijian immediately noticed the surge of spiritual energy on the cliff edge platform. Just as he was about to go down to investigate, he saw a thunderbolt instantly strike the sky, blocking his attempt to further investigate. He quickly threw out his prepared magic weapon to block it. As Tan Zijian was crossing the tribulation, Lin Xiaoya, who was immersed in refining the fire-type spiritual essence and suppressing the spiritual essence rebellion, suddenly felt a tingling and sour sensation. Feeling the unknown changes happening outside, Lin Xiaoya stopped practicing. As soon as she sensed it, her whole body trembled uncontrollably. The sky was covered in dark clouds, and thunder and lightning ran like dragons and snakes, covering the entire sky. One after another, lightning struck him with precision, and most of the lightning was attracted by the magical tools thrown by Zijian. Only a small part of the lightning struck him, and even a small part of the lightning hit him with scars and blood splattering. Lin Xiaoya knew everything that happened on the cliff and instantly understood that someone was crossing the thunder disaster. Lin Xiaoya quickly concealed her breath, afraid of being sensed by the looting thunder. According to the records of natural history, when someone crosses a tribulation, others must stay far away, otherwise they will be mistaken for accomplices by the tribulation. The power of the tribulation will also be greatly enhanced, and everyone within the range of the tribulation will be struck by lightning. In order to prevent Lei Jie from thinking that she was a middle-aged man's accomplice, Lin Xiaoya desperately hid her spiritual fluctuations and tried to pretend that she did not exist. But the reality is often unsatisfactory. The more Lin Xiaoya hides herself, the more Lei Jie can detect her existence from subtle spiritual changes. Lei Jie felt that someone was actually deceiving him, and he was instantly enraged. The originally ordinary Lei Jie was upgraded to a higher level 9-turn thunder, and in his anger, he divided into two parts and began to desperately chop Zijian and Lin Xiaoya, one by one. Zijian noticed that the thunderbolt seemed to have undergone an unknown change. He clearly felt that the power of the thunderbolt was increasing, and the originally ordinary thunderbolt became darker and heavier. The strong pressure made it almost impossible for him to stand, and he half sat on the ground in embarrassment. Zijian, whose consciousness was blurred by the lightning strike, didn't understand what had happened and why the power of the lightning strike suddenly increased. However, he knew that he had an 80% chance of surviving the lightning strike, and now only the last 20% remained. It seems that he can only use his last weapon to fight to the death. Lin Xiaoya, who was desperately hiding herself, seemed to sense the anger of Lei Jie and couldn't help but stiffen all over. "Jiele, I didn't mean to do it, do you believe me? I'm just afraid of you chopping me, why are you so angry?" But Jiele didn't know Lin Xiaoya's thoughts. It only knew that when he was chopping a man, he didn't notice that she had already given birth to spiritual intelligence. He was furious with his incompetence and hid his anger at her for not being obedient and being chopped. The thunderbolt with explosive anger combined the prepared lightning waves one after another to form a super thick lightning wave. Then, the soldiers split into two paths and headed towards Zijian and Lin Xiaoya. From a distance, they saw a dazzling electric light shining brightly on the sky and the earth. Zijian took out the treasure he had prepared for a long time, and the thought of this treasure that had cost him countless efforts made him feel heartbroken. But compared to life, the magic weapon can still be refined, and there is only one human life. But he just felt heartbroken. He didn't need to use this life-saving treasure originally, but as the power of Thunderbolt increased, he had to use it. When he gets through the thunder disaster, he insists on shattering the thing that caused trouble during his journey. Zijian casually took out a red jadeite gourd-shaped magic weapon, forcing out a drop of his own essence and blood, while frantically using his spiritual energy to activate the magic weapon. I saw a blood-colored barrier floating around him, and Zijian sat under it, watching the thunderbolt shooting from afar, his eyes full of madness. "Come on, I'm not afraid of you." End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Self-Help. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 Self-Help. On the other side, Lin Xiaoya saw the thunderbolt shooting towards her and was at a loss for a moment. "My heart is full of roast. God, do you want to do this again? Last time, I was attacked by magic. This time, I was struck by thunder. Do you want to be so unlucky?" At this moment, she suddenly remembered the structure of the lightning rod. If she turned herself into a conductive lightning rod and led lightning into the ground, could there be a glimmer of vitality? So, Lin Xiaoya did not suppress the rebellion of the fire-type spiritual essence in her body, but crazily absorbed the surrounding water, trying to turn herself into a conductive body and guide lightning underground. However, she did not know that reality often did not meet expectations. Just as Lin Xiaoya was no longer suppressing the fire spirit marrow, the vague spiritual consciousness in the fire spirit marrow realized that the power to suppress its spiritual power was already in trouble. The fire spirit marrow, which had been suppressed for a long time, sensed Lin Xiaoya's helplessness and immediately activated all the power to kill the thing that had been suppressing its spiritual power. At this moment, the thunder disaster in the sky also struck Lin Xiaoya with a majestic force. Despite being attacked from both sides, she had no way to save herself and could only clumsily use all the spiritual energy in her body to protect her only lifeline. On this cloudy noon, a thick and precise lightning struck Lin Xiaoya. At first, she felt a tingling pain all over her body. But as the thunder and lightning followed the water-filled branches and trunks all the way to the roots, it collided with the fire spirit marrow hidden deep in the roots. In an instant, the intersection of fire spirit chi and thunder calamity brought together the suppressed rage of fire spirit essence and the deceived rage of thunder. The two powerful deadly forces sublimated in the continuous collision. Only a loud explosion was heard, and Lin Xiaoya's tree body was instantly shattered. The entire platform was also reduced to 1/3 of its original size by this explosion. Lin Xiaoya had long guessed that the fire spirit marrow she had obtained seemed to have a vague spiritual consciousness. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been tormented by her refinement and suppression, and would have launched a spiritual uprising every day at noon when the sunlight was at its strongest and the fire energy was most active. But she was powerless and could only watch herself being tortured. If possible, Lin Xiaoya doesn't want such a precious treasure that constantly threatens her life, even if it's incredibly precious. But she never expected that she would still be feeling the extreme pain all over her body. Lin Xiaoya watched helplessly as her whole body was torn apart, and her consciousness gradually blurred deep into the pain. She felt the boundless darkness and chaos. During Lin Xiaoya's coma, Zijian used all his life-saving treasures to successfully overcome the golden elixir. He never expected such a big mistake to occur during this crossing of the tribulation, but fortunately, due to misfortune and blessings, he formed the 6 transformations golden elixir. Prior to this, Zijian had inquired with several cultivators and by Shaoxing about the precautions and important content of crossing the golden elixir in order to have sufficient confidence in crossing it. According to his inquiry, the golden elixir is divided into 9 levels. From the first level to the 9th level, the closer to the 9th level, the better the qualification of the golden elixir. The 9th level golden elixir is also the legendary flawless golden elixir, with the greatest possibility of reaching the highest level of cultivation. Generally speaking, the richer the spiritual energy, the better the individual's qualifications, and the better the qualification of the golden elixir formed. And crossing the tribulation in a place with scarce spiritual energy like him, even if his personal qualifications are good, it is best to be able to produce the 5 transformations golden pill, which is an unparalleled existence. A cultivator like himself who accidentally forms the 6 transformations golden pill has a very low possibility of existence. Originally, Zijian was furious about the sudden mistake. He planned to wait for himself to recover and then peel off the skin of the thing that had tarnished him. He never expected that he would be fortunate enough to cultivate the 6 transformations golden elixir, which represents his promising future and imminent revenge. He saw that he had indeed benefited, so he didn't want to hurt the assassin again. The dark clouds on the horizon gradually dissipated, and a rainbow hung in the sky. A spiritual shower full of rich spiritual energy descended from the sky, sprinkling on Zijian and Lin Xiaoya. Zijian felt the nourishment of the heavenly spirit Zai on his entire body, and couldn't help but cross-legged meditation technique crazily absorbing the gifts from the thunder calamity. On the other hand, Lin Xiaoya, who was on the brink of death, also felt the nourishment of this heavenly spirit. The tree roots exposed by the explosion felt this spirit that could save the tree, instinctively and greedily absorbing it. In contrast, Tan Zijian's ability to absorb Lingzi is too poor. Tan Zijian only absorbed 7/10 of the same Lingzi, and the remaining 3/10 were absorbed by surrounding plants. Lin Xiaoya, on the other hand, absorbs 100% of it, and there is no cheaper Lingzi than other plants. Due to the explosion, only the roots buried deep underground are still alive, and all other tree trunks, branches, and leaves have disappeared, either turning into ashes or being struck by lightning and falling below the platform. After Tan Zijian finished repairing himself, he felt much better all over. At this moment, he remembered the mistakes and accidents that occurred during the process of crossing the robbery, and flew off the cliff. Tan Zijian suddenly fell onto the platform at the foot of the cliff, which was only slightly left. What caught his eye was a triangular area, as the lightning strike had made the already small platform smaller. And the strange tree that originally grew on the platform is also missing. He suspects that this tree is the culprit that led to his mistake in crossing the tribulation. When he saw that the big tree had been struck by lightning and only had a few bare roots left, he couldn't help but cast the spell of spring breeze, rain, and rebirth of plants and trees. Upon seeing such a scene, Tan Zijian couldn't help but sympathize. Feeling that since the trouble no longer existed, there was no point in pursuing it further, he flew away. Just like this, how long has passed? Lin Xiaoya walked aimlessly in the dark world, unsure of where to go. One day, Lin Xiaoya, who was dazed, saw a light shining in the distance. As she approached, the light became more and more dazzling, and she instinctively ran towards the light with a hint of active thinking triggered by the light. When she rushed to the space full of dazzling light, her body seemed to have run out of electricity, and she couldn't help but spread out in the white space and fainted. The next second, Lin Xiaoya woke up with pain all over her body, as if the pain of being cut was accompanying her. She dared not even move, afraid that her body would shatter in the next second. After a while, Lin Xiaoya finally regained her composure. She felt that if she were still human, she would be covered in cold sweat and embarrassed. At this moment, Lin Xiaoya finally had the energy to internalize her current situation. Whether she looked or didn't know, she was startled by her current miserable situation. Lin Xiaoya now only has thick roots buried deep underground and still alive. Her thick tree body, dense leaves, and thriving branches have all disappeared. The original growth platform has also shrunk significantly, and most of the roots are exposed due to the power of the explosion. It looks so miserable. Lin Xiaoya couldn't believe that she was so miserable that only her roots were left. She was still alive, and all she wanted to do was shout, "Unbelievable." She was still alive. Although it hurt so much, it was proof of her existence. Starting from today, we have signed a contract. Happy. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Blooming. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Blooming. Upon closer inspection, Lin Xiaoya realized that she had two strange forces slowly repairing her broken body. Although it was slow, it was very beneficial to her body. Although Lin Xiaoya's life has been saved now, the pain that accompanies her is like a maggot on the tarsal bone, constantly tormenting her. Although she can barely bear it, the constant pain has left her with no energy or spirit. In order to eliminate internal pain, Lin Xiaoya began to seek external solutions. So, Lin Xiaoya endured the pain and extended her spiritual tentacles in all directions, observing everything outside. Lin Xiaoya doesn't know how long it has been. The flowers, plants, and trees on the flat ground above the cliff have already grown lush, no longer the same as before when they were struck by lightning and barren. The explosion pit that was originally caused by the cultivator's self-explosion has also been moved to the flat ground. Lin Xiaoya was extremely surprised to see the scenery on the flat ground above the cliff. Oh my God, I don't know how long I've been unconscious, why everything has returned to its original state. The flowers, plants, and trees on the flat ground are no longer as sparse as before, all growing extremely well. The originally thin spiritual energy in the air has also been enriched, especially the water spiritual energy, which is much richer than before. Lin Xiaoya clearly felt the changes in the outside world, with abundant spiritual energy constantly coming from the sea, especially the increasing amount of water spiritual energy. Thinking of this, Lin Xiaoya was instantly excited, thinking that it was because she didn't have enough water spiritual energy that she was abused and tortured by the fire spirit marrow every day. If there were such abundant water spiritual energy at that time, she wouldn't be afraid of it anymore. Thinking of the fire spirit marrow, Lin Xiaoya couldn't help but wonder. Strange, where is the fire spirit marrow? It seems that she hasn't felt the burning pain of the fire spirit marrow since waking up. During the process of crossing the calamity, she seemed to remember that when Lei Jia was chopping herself, the fire spirit marrow seemed to riot. Although the time was short, Lin Xiaoya also clearly felt that the fire spirit marrow seemed to be angry. Angry. A stone can still be angry, it must be because I think too much. Lin Xiaoya, who had no prior knowledge, did not know that the mid-range fire-type spiritual essence was boundless, and the fire spiritual essence with spiritual consciousness was even more of the best among the best, a spirit essence that could constantly evolve. Lin Xiaoya's habitual introspection revealed that the fire spirit essence, which she had never refined, had been completely refined due to misfortune. The originally scorching fire spiritual power has become as warm as the little sun. The fire spiritual power circulates in Lin Xiaoya's roots with her instincts, constantly repairing her damaged spiritual consciousness and tree veins. In addition to the fire spirit power, Lin Xiaoya also discovered that there were three other forces in her body. One was the thunderbolt power left by the thunderbolt calamity, and she remained motionless in the depths of her sea of consciousness, only occasionally releasing a trace of thunderbolt voltage to naturally restrain her wood attributes fire spirit power. Lin Xiaoya didn't know how the other two spiritual powers came about, but she found that these two spiritual powers were completely harmless and had great benefits for her, as they were constantly repairing her dying body. As these two healing powers continue to repair her damaged tree veins, the fire spiritual power that originally restrained her wooden attributes is also guided by them to repair the tree body. Lin Xiaoya kept refining the three forces that suddenly appeared in her body, repairing her damaged perception and tree veins. She also kept practicing, crazily absorbing external spiritual energy, especially water spiritual energy. I don't know how long it has been like this, but Lin Xiaoya feels that her perception has almost been restored. Even her body, which only has roots, has grown new saplings, and everything is developing in a positive direction. After waking up this time, Lin Xiaoya realized that her spiritual perception had undergone a great change, and it seemed that her spiritual perception had evolved into mysterious spiritual tentacles. This spiritual tentacle not only has the ability to retrieve objects with intention, but also has a particularly wide range of contact. It has to be said that when Lin Xiaoya took the Qianquan bag back then, she had to straighten her own roots to barely get it back, but now she's just like adding wings to a tiger, it's amazing. This spiritual tentacle must be said to be very useful, covering a range of 100 kilometers within her reach. Moreover, this spiritual tentacle was able to move freely, which gave her a great surprise. When Lin Xiaoya has free time, she keeps thinking about the use of this spiritual tentacle. I thought it would be great if I could become a real human, and in this case, I could make some adjustments to the bumpy platform I am on due to the thunder disaster. The next second, the spiritual tentacles turned into a pair of big hands, and Lin Xiaoya was extremely happy. She quickly used her big hands to comb her exposed roots back together, and then brought nutritious soil from the cliff to bury the exposed roots again. When she reburied her roots in fertile soil, Lin Xiaoya suddenly felt the unparalleled comfort of her roots, as if her dry skin had suddenly been nourished by water. The feeling was simply amazing, no wonder the roots of plants were buried underground. After Lin Xiaoya buried all her remaining roots, she used her spiritual tentacles to search for suitable stones to reinforce the platform. In the process of constantly searching for stones, she gained a deeper understanding of the power of her spiritual tentacles. She found that she could easily lift a large stone, which weighed at least 100 pounds. Lin Xiaoya selected suitable stones, first reinforced the platform, then picked out stones of the same size and surrounded the land where she had already grown seedlings with a circle of stones. Although Lin Xiaoya doesn't know what this is for, she has seen the practice of doing it and it should be beneficial. Sure enough, after being surrounded, she clearly felt that her mood had improved and her mood had also improved significantly. With the improvement of her mood, Lin Xiaoya's tree body also had the idea of rapid growth. In order to quickly grow into her once lush self, Lin Xiaoya constantly receives nutrients from the soil and absorbs spiritual energy for cultivation. I don't know how long it has been, but Lin Xiaoya, who didn't hear anything outside the window and focused solely on reading books of sages, is still practicing non-stop. With Lin Xiaoya's cultivation, her tree body is also growing rapidly. The red stripes that originally surrounded her tree body in circles are gone, and it has returned to its original reddish-brown tree body. The originally fiery red leaves have all disappeared and become the green leaves that ordinary trees possess. It seems that everything that happened before was like a dream, but now she is a genuine peach tree. But as Lin Xiaoya bloomed, the fiery red flowers bloomed all over the branches, and the bright red flowers were filled with strong fire spiritual power. At first glance, it was clear that this was not an ordinary peach tree. When Lin Xiaoya regained her senses from her crazy cultivation, she saw her head covered in fiery red flowers, and it must be said that she looked beautiful from a distance. Lin Xiaoya remembers learning in school that flowers are the reproductive organs of plants, and as long as they are pollinated, they can bloom and bear fruit. Lin Xiaoya, who has survived for so many years, also saw herself blooming for the first time. She felt quite happy that she had already gone through half of a tree's life and it was worth it. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Results. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 results. At this moment, a swaying little bee appeared before her eyes. Observing that its target was the blooming flower, Lin Xiaoya panicked instantly. She quickly wrapped the little bee with her spiritual tentacles and placed it on the other blooming flowers on the cliff. Lin Xiaoya, who bloomed for the first time, has some degree of psychological cleanliness. She doesn't want other organisms to stain her flowers, especially since she has learned that peach trees can self-pollinate. She doesn't want to be contaminated. Although she knows that self-pollination cannot produce the highest quality fruits, she also does not want to be defiled. So, Lin Xiaoya flexibly used her spiritual tentacles and learned the steps taught by the teacher to start self-pollination. Not long after, Lin Xiaoya pollinated 325 flowers for herself. While pollinating, she counted them and felt like she was really amazing. She bloomed so many flowers for the first time. After a while, Lin Xiaoya's flowers began to wither. Lin Xiaoya saw the strong fire spiritual power emanating from her flowers, so she wanted to collect it and dry it in the sun. After she could cultivate into an adult, she would soak it in water and drink it. Lin Xiaoya, who has the mindset of an owner, doesn't care if this is her reproductive organ. She thinks of the peach blossom tea she once drank, and her thoughts go crazy, like eating and drinking. Lin Xiaoya began to collect her flowers bit by bit, choosing a clean, flat, and sunny place on the flat ground. After cleaning it up, she began to sun-dry it. After Lin Xiaoya collected all her flowers and sun-dried them for 90.9 to 80.1 days, the petals changed from a pile to a small jar. Lin Xiaoya took out her well-preserved Xiankuan bag and skillfully opened it with her divine sense, collecting the petal tea. Then he took out the spiritual crystals that were activated by the rich fire spiritual energy and sublimated into fire spiritual stones while refining his own fire spiritual essence, and placed them around the pile of petal tea, trying to maintain the fire attribute of the dry petals in this way. After Lin Xiaoya finished her work, she looked at the treetops where she had already grown small fruits, full of a sense of achievement. Although the fruiting rate of self-pollination was not very high, she only discovered 7 fruits several times throughout the tree. Compared to 324 flowers, the fruiting rate was also too low. Therefore, Lin Xiaoya took great care of them. Every day, I humbly absorb the nutrients from the soil, carefully nurture every fruit, and constantly cultivate it. I use the spiritual power of fire to nourish every fruit. When the weather is good, I should sunbathe more, and when the weather is bad, I should protect the fruit well. With Lin Xiaoya's careful care, the fruit grows healthily day by day, growing bigger and redder. The crystalline skin of the spirit stone begins to appear on the fruit skin, which looks like a peach-shaped spirit stone hanging on the tree top from a distance. Lin Xiaoya was extremely puzzled. Although she was an ordinary peach tree, why did her fruit grow bigger and bigger, like a crystal peach carved by a skilled craftsman into a large opaque red crystal? If it weren't for Lin Xiaoya watching it grow little by little, she wouldn't have believed that this strange water spirit peach was actually her own fruit. As the fruit continued to grow, even if the fruit underwent changes, Lin Xiaoya continued to provide nutrition and fire spiritual energy as usual. She wanted to see what strange things could come out in the end. As the fruit grew rapidly, Lin Xiaoya also kept practicing, but her attention was not very focused, occasionally observing her own fruit. Finally, on a sunny day, when the fruit stopped growing and the nutrients and fire spiritual power provided by Lin Xiaoya could no longer be transported into the fruit through the tree stem, Lin Xiaoya knew that the fruit was about to mature. Lin Xiaoya stopped practicing and waited quietly for the fruits to ripen. So, Lin Xiaoya went from day to night, from night to day again. At noon the next day, when the sunlight was most intense, the stems of Lin Xiaoya's fruits began to break one by one, and the fruits fell off one by one. At this time, Lin Xiaoya had already learned the 1,000-handed Avalokitesvara of Buddhism, and instantly transformed into countless hands, beginning to pick up the fruits that fell to the ground. With Lin Xiaoya's skillful operation of brushing, the fruit was firmly caught by her spiritual tentacles. Lin Xiaoya took out her own Qiankuan bag, immediately put away the other 6 fruits, and then quietly looked at the crystal fruit, ready to understand why her fruit had undergone this change. She felt that it was closely related to the fire spirit essence she had refined. Lin Xiaoya poked the crystal fruit with her spiritual tentacles and found that the surface of the fruit was very smooth, with no peach fuzz on the surface. It has a flexible touch like an elastic ball, but the crystal peach is warm, like a hand-warming treasure, always keeping warm. When Lin Xiaoya thought about picking up the fallen fruit just now, she thought that peaches that were several times larger than ordinary peaches would be very heavy, but surprisingly light, only about 1 pound. Especially the crystalline outer layer of the skin made her almost think that the fruit was solid and heavy, but the fact was exactly the opposite. Lin Xiaoya pinched the skin of the peach hard, and found that it was very smooth and soft, just like a large red gum shaped like a peach. She tentatively raised the fruit, then sprinkled it with both hands, and as the fruit touched the ground like a ball, it bounced high. There was no situation where the fruit would shatter under the influence of gravity as she had imagined. The moment it fell to the ground, it looked like a bouncing slime, which was too bouncing. With Lin Xiaoya's probing, doubts increased instead of decreasing. A fiery red peach that looked like a hard crystal turned out to have a soft, smooth, and elastic outer skin. It was so strange. Just as Lin Xiaoya was continuing to study her fruits, a woman dressed in a bright red wedding dress suddenly appeared on the cliff. As she ran towards the edge of the cliff, tears streamed down her face, her eyes filled with determination. "Lin Lang, I can't wait for you anymore. Why don't you come back to find me? Why? You promised to marry me, but why haven't you come back? I can't wait anymore, I really can't wait anymore." The crying of the bride, as if complaining, reached her ears, and Lin Xiaoya couldn't help but wonder. It was really strange why she heard someone crying, and the crying was still so poignant, her words filled with resentment and despair. "Have you watched the anime of Shenlong Chiyu without twin beads? Strongly recommended, I can't afford to lose out or fall for it. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Suicide. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Suicide. Lin Xiaoya will wake up in the next second. Oh my God, someone is here. Thinking of the tragic experiences she had encountered with humans a few times before, Lin Xiaoya quickly came to the flat ground on the cliff, wanting to see what had happened and also to take preventive measures. Lin Xiaoya saw a woman dressed in a bright red wedding dress appear in front of her, with a delicate face, a thin body, and a face that was white and red. She looked like a young girl, only 17 or 18 years old. I saw the little girl sitting on the flat ground not far from the cliff, not very old, with a strong resentment in her words. Listening to her, it seemed like a woman who had been betrayed by a man, resenting her lover for not coming to pick her up and for abandoning her. Lin Xiaoya, who has watched countless dog blood movies and TV dramas, knows that most men are unreliable, but she doesn't understand why a woman has to live and die for a man. But she knew that the little girl's dying heart was serious. Sitting on the edge of the cliff, crying bitterly about one's tragic life, the voice was incredibly mournful. The little girl seemed to have finished confiding, and with a flick of the red cap on her head, she ran straight towards the cliff and jumped off with lightning speed. Lin Xiaoya, who was listening attentively to the little girl recounting her tragic life, suddenly realized and quickly caught the girl jumping off the cliff with her spiritual tentacles. To prevent the little girl from jumping off the cliff and causing harm to her own tree body, as her tree body is directly below the cliff, the little girl may not die, but she herself will definitely be affected. She doesn't want to be hurt again. The little girl closed her eyes and jumped down, putting all her eggs in one basket. Lin Xiaoya couldn't help but feel a resentful attitude, making her want to give her a hard beating and make her long remember whether she would end her life so easily next time. It has been so difficult to live well these days, and some people still want to commit suicide. Do you care about the feelings of us who are even rare to live? Lin Xiaoya, who lives hard, deeply understands. Lin Xiaoya quickly caught the little girl and sent her to the flat ground on the cliff. The little girl didn't seem to feel the sensation of rapid descent. She opened her eyes in confusion and saw herself floating half a meter above the ground. The little girl seemed to be frightened and couldn't help but move her body backwards, falling to the ground. Lin Xiaoya looked at the woman's fear of death and couldn't help but sneer, "You're so afraid of death. How dare you jump and commit suicide? Are you tired of living?" Who knew that the woman seemed to have heard what she was saying, and in an instant, she pushed back in fear. Her wandering little eyes searched around, trying to find the voice to make a sound. Lin Xiaoya, who did not notice these things, continued to remorselessly roast. Women who jumped off a cliff to commit suicide for a man who abandoned themselves are the stupidest. No wonder people on the internet say that women in ancient times had better cheat. It's so easy to be deceived. If a man doesn't lie to her, who will he lie to? It's impossible to say that man has long been pregnant with a spoiled wife, giving birth to countless chubby kids, and having a whole family of sons. She is afraid of death and has the courage to jump off a cliff. If she knew that suicide would not enter reincarnation, and that she would be a lonely ghost all her life, bullied by other lonely ghosts, she wouldn't know if she wanted to continue suicide. When the young woman heard Lin Xiaoya's roast and heard her slander against her Ailang, she summoned up her courage and pleaded in a low voice. "No, Lin Lang won't lie to me. He said he would come to find me, I don't believe he will lie to me. No." The girl kept muttering, her voice getting louder and louder. I didn't even hear Lin Xiaoya's words clearly, and I firmly didn't believe that Lin Lang, who was her childhood sweetheart, would deceive her. Even ghosts couldn't deny their love. Lin Xiaoya, who was chatting confidently, became excited when she found that the young woman could understand what she was saying. After so many years, she has finally been able to communicate well with humans. She is afraid that if she doesn't communicate with humans again, she will completely degenerate into a true tree. "Hello, little girl, you can hear me talking?" Lin Xiaoya asked excitedly, and her spiritual tentacles kept gesturing with various gestures amidst Lin Xiaoya's excited emotions. The young woman heard Lin Xiaoya's excited words and answered with half fear and half determination, "Yes. But who are you? Why did you arrange my Lin Lang like this? My Lin Lang has offended you." Upon hearing the young woman's words, Lin Xiaoya was extremely unhappy. Even though she had saved her, she didn't thank her and dared to defend the stinky man who abandoned her like this. It's really hopeless. Lin Xiaoya didn't have to think about telling her who she was, but she was afraid that she would jump off the cliff again and hurt her tree body, tarnishing her territory. So Lin Xiaoya half-true and half-false nonsense. "I am the spirit of this cliff, the controller of this cliff. You come here to commit suicide and stain my land, and dare to say that I have arranged your men. I'm sorry, I've been living here for thousands of years and have heard countless stories of infatuated men and women. You think your story is the most tragic, and even worse, some of them are that I have the leisure time to arrange your men. It's ridiculous." As soon as the young woman heard it, she suddenly thought of the mountain god that her mother-in-law had once said, and guessed that this voice might be the legendary mountain god. "My mother-in-law once said that every mountain has its own owner, who is the mountain god. Only the mountain god can live for so long." Thinking of her previous suicide, the mountain god was originally living a good life here. Suddenly, one day, a human came here to commit suicide. Her blood stained the land of the mountain god, and even if she were the mountain god, she would feel very unhappy. The little girl quickly kowtowed apologetically to the cliff, constantly apologizing, "I'm sorry, mountain goddess, I didn't know this was your place. I'm sorry, I'm leaving now." The little girl kowtowed and kept retreating, quickly getting up, wanting to escape from here. However, Lin Xiaoya finally waited for the arrival of other humans and wanted to have a good chat with the little girl. She didn't want to let the little girl leave easily. He used his spiritual tentacles to grab the wedding dress of the little girl who was about to escape, and didn't plan to let her leave because she hadn't talked enough yet. The little girl who was about to escape felt the immense power behind Lin Xiaoya, and no matter how hard she struggled, she couldn't escape from the palm of the mountain god's hand. The young woman couldn't help but vent her anger and collapsed on the ground, begging for mercy from the mountain god. "Sorry, the mountain god lady, I didn't mean to. Please let me go." Lin Xiaoya looked at the little girl who was intimidated by herself and stopped running. She was so scared that she trembled all over. Lin Xiaoya also felt embarrassed. But how could Lin Xiaoya let go of this ordinary woman who suddenly appeared on the cliff and had weaker overall strength than herself? She was too bored to find someone to pass the time. So Lin Xiaoya asked seriously, "I can let you go, but if you want to keep the story of you and your lover, I will judge your relationship. If it's true love, I will let you go." When a young woman hears the story and feelings of the land father-in-law wanting to know about herself and her lover, the emotions that were originally buried deep in her heart instantly have the desire to confide in her. Since the mountain goddess did not dislike her for jumping off a cliff and committing suicide, she had to listen to her own and Lin Lang's stories and tell her everything, which was not impossible. The young woman found a place to sit down, stroked her hair at the temples, reminisced about her life, and prepared to slowly tell everything about herself. End of this chapter.